Shahidul Alam Sahab, please tell us. I would like to ask my question by referring the latest World Press Freedom Index. Last year in 2024, Bangladesh was on the number 165 out of 180 countries. So the ranking of the Bangladesh in World Press Freedom Index was very low. But in 2025, now we are entered in 2026, but in 2024 it was 165, and in 2025 it improved to 149. There is a massive improvement in the Press Freedom Index about Bangladesh. So what was the difference, what happened in 1 year that Bangladesh improved so much from 165 to 149? Was the restrictions on the Bangladeshi media and political parties imposed in the name of national security?
Thank you for that. Firstly, I want to say that they tried to cancel our talk with Arundhati. We didn't succumb. Yeah. We found another place and we did it anyway. And that's what we usually do. Thank you for that reference to the Freedom of Expression Index. Of course, Bangladesh did rise, but it's still pretty low down.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to wave a flag about it, though I do think we need to be congratulated for the shift. One big difference, of course, is that in 2025, we had what is said to be a neutral interim government. So the government was not designed, it was not a political government. It was a government that came in specifically with the idea of reforms. And one of the things that has been put in is a set of media reforms. Whether we will implement it or not, time will tell. But interestingly enough, there are two things I want to bring up on that issue. One is that, is that? Okay. When we have a shift, we also, as journalists, need to adapt to it. And I think one of the problems we have, one of the reasons we've not done more, is because journalists have not become used to the fact that there's not as much restriction on freedom of expression. And journalists themselves need to actually get used to a different climate. While the government has very clearly said, you're open to criticize us, you're open to ask questions, there will not be a banning or repressive measures taken, the journalists themselves have not fully believed it and have not, in my opinion, done enough to take advantage of this situation and come up with the critical questions, come up with the role that they need to have in order to do that. But I would like to move from this end of the spectrum to another part of the spectrum. I mean, I look at the panel, the sponsors to this, and I hope I don't get people into trouble here. There are very impressive organizations, Western organizations. Certainly Bangladesh is low down, as is Pakistan and some of our other countries. Right up there are the Scandinavian countries, very high on the Freedom of Expression Index. My question is, what are you doing with your freedoms? And what is the point of having that freedom if you're not prepared to exercise it? Because if you look at the world today, in terms of what is happening, in terms of the blatant abuse of power that is taking place, I don't think journalists who have that freedom have actually exercised it. And I find that problematic because, you know, the West's selective invocation of freedom of expression as a weapon, not a principle, the silencing of Julian Assange, Palestinian voices, funding press freedom initiatives abroad while prosecuting whistleblowers at home is problematic. So I would like to look at those aspects, but I want to, while I have the mic, talk of something else which I think is relevant, and that is the freedom of expression includes the right to offend. And this is something I don't think we take sufficient cognizance of. It's a very selective right. You cannot offend powerful people or majority religions, but the fact that these same people are constantly trampling over the less powerful or minority religions is never an issue. So while it sounds good in principle, what happens in practice, I think, is important. And I think in terms of what we need to do it even if it goes against our personal interest. Will Pakistani lawyers campaign for Pakistan to pay reparations to Bangladesh? I would love to see it happen, but I won't be holding my breath. Real commitment to free expression means defending it consistently, not instrumentally, even when the truth indicts us.
Mr. Shahidul Alam, now I would like to ask a question about your personal experience. Have you been declared a threat to national security in the past, and how did you defend yourself? Because we want to learn something from you. How you and me can defend myself in the experience of Mr. Shahidul Alam.
In the last session, there was a reference to the DSA, the Digital Security Act.
Yeah.
That is a very nasty word in Bangladesh. I was actually picked up, tortured, spent time in jail in 2018 because I was reporting. That's my job. But of course, it was reporting that was not considered favorable to the government. So that was their response. The interesting thing is, at that time, I was picked up. I wouldn't say arrested, because arrest has a procedure. I was picked up under what is called the ICT Act, Information and Communication Technology Act. We protested. It was a draconian law. We protested. They replaced it with DSA, the Digital Security Act, which was much worse. We protested against that. They replaced it with CSA, Cyber Security Act, which was even worse. Then we had the interim government, and we thought, okay, these are our friends, human rights workers, civil society people. They will actually come up with something which will be better. They brought out the Cyber Protection Ordinance, the CPO, and in fact, that wasn't very different from the previous three ones. And largely, we discovered because it had been drafted by the same bureaucrats who drafted the previous ones. Some low-level clerk somewhere had done it and did it to a format. We were fortunately able to talk to the ministry. Civil society played a role, and we were able to bring about changes. And now we have the makings of a somewhat more sensible set of laws. But whether that's enough is a matter of debate. This is what governments do. But I think what we need to look at is our own role within this space, because at the end of the day, I mean, I think if we are referring to Asma, for instance, Asma's refusal to accept double standards from any quarter was what made her special. She was extraordinary, but she shouldn't have had to be. I think it is we as journalists doing our normal job that needs to be celebrated, and we need to be doing that. We've not learned from each other's experiences, which is unfortunate, but I think we need to look not only at what governments do to try and stop us, but what we can do to resist. They have resources, we have resolve. They have weapons, we have witnesses. They have propaganda, we have proof. And in the long accounting of history, I think proof prevails. And I think we need to remember that we've already won the moment we refuse to lie. And that really is a very powerful thing to remind ourselves with. I would, we were talking of words, I would actually use 3 words to express how we combat it. Document, resist, repeat. And that has to be what we do consistently. And we win not by waiting for the powerful to validate our struggle, but by building something that they cannot destroy. And that must be our challenge.